Jake thought his marriage was unshakable, a foundation built on love and trust. But when he discovers his wife Samantha's affair, his world begins to unravel. Fueled by anger and betrayal, Jake plans a confrontation that sets off a series of devastating events. As secrets deeper than infidelity emerge, Samantha's past choices bring danger to their doorstep, culminating in a chilling abduction that forces Jake into a race against time. What begins as a story of betrayal ends in heartbreak, as Jake confronts not only the cost of revenge but also the unthinkable tragedy of losing what he holds most dear. A tale of love, loss, and the haunting consequences of broken trust. The air felt thick with tension the night Samantha came home late again. I had just finished tucking Lily into bed and was sitting in the living room with a book, trying to distract myself from the sinking feeling that had taken root in my chest. Samantha's car pulled into the driveway, her headlights briefly sweeping across the living room walls. I shut the book and waited. When she walked in, there was no usual warmth. No playful banter about her day, no soft kiss on my cheek. She dropped her bag on the counter with a thud and mumbled, "Hey," without meeting my eyes. Her phone was clutched tightly in her hand, and she set it down, face down, on the kitchen counter. I wanted to ignore the voice in my head that whispered suspicions. I wanted to believe the long hours and frequent business trips were just the price of her ambition. But something felt off. The scent of cologne lingered faintly on her clothes, one I didn't recognize. I tried to tell myself it could have been anyone's, a client's handshake or an accidental brush in the elevator. But my gut didn't believe it. "How was work?" I asked, my voice steady but my heart racing. "Long," she replied quickly, brushing past me to head upstairs. "I'm exhausted." I watched her retreating figure, every part of me wanting to follow her, to demand answers, to lay my fears bare. But instead, I stayed rooted to the spot, replaying the moments in my mind. The glances at her phone, the abrupt changes in her schedule, the growing distance between us, it all painted a picture I wasn't ready to see. For the next few weeks, life carried on as usual on the surface. Samantha and I still shared meals, laughed at Lily's antics, and kept up appearances. But underneath, my unease grew. Every time her phone buzzed or she mentioned a last-minute meeting, I felt a pang of dread. I told myself I was imagining things. I wanted so badly to believe in the life we had built, in the love we once shared. Then came the day that shattered my illusions. It was a Saturday morning, and I was cleaning out the garage while Samantha and Lily were out shopping. Amid the clutter of old tools and forgotten sports equipment, I found it, a second phone. It was tucked inside an old toolbox, wrapped in a cloth as though she wanted to keep it hidden but not entirely out of reach. My hands trembled as I unwrapped it and powered it on. The screen lit up, revealing a password prompt. I stared at it for a moment, my mind racing. Then, almost instinctively, I entered the year of Samantha's birth. The phone unlocked. What I saw confirmed everything I had feared. Messages from someone named Liam filled the screen, their tone unmistakably intimate. There were pet names, plans for dinners, and photos of hotel rooms. Each word was a dagger, carving away the life I thought I knew. I sat on the cold garage floor, the phone clutched in my hands, my breath shallow. I wanted to scream, to cry, to storm into the house and confront her. But a small, calm voice in the back of my mind urged me to wait. To think. To plan. I spent the rest of the day pretending everything was normal. When Samantha returned home, I greeted her with a smile, kissed Lily on the forehead, and made dinner as though nothing had changed. But inside, a fire had ignited. If Samantha thought she could rewrite our script without consequences, she was wrong. That night, after she went to bed, I began my investigation. I combed through her social media, her email, her work schedule, anything that could piece together the puzzle. I found nothing overt, but the gaps were telling. Missed meetings, unexplained absences, and hotel stays that didn't align with her supposed work trips. I needed more. Something irrefutable. That's when I decided to hire a private investigator. The PI was efficient and discreet. Over the next 2 weeks, he documented everything: photographs of Samantha with Liam, records of her visits to his downtown apartment, and even a receipt from a weekend getaway they had taken together. Each piece of evidence was like a nail in the coffin of our marriage. By the time the investigator handed me the final report, I had already decided what I would do. Samantha had rewritten our story, but I was going to write the ending. It would start with her favorite dinner. The aroma of Samantha's favorite meal filled the kitchen, a slow-cooked beef bourguignon, paired with her preferred Cabernet. The table was set with our best china, candles flickering gently in the dim light. Lily was staying the night at her friend's house, and the stage was set for the confrontation I'd planned. I stood at the counter, pouring the wine and rehearsing my words in my head. My emotions warred between rage and heartbreak, but I knew I had to keep a clear head. Tonight wasn't just about confronting Samantha, it was about reclaiming control over my life. The front door opened, and Samantha's heels clicked against the hardwood floor. "Jake," she called out, her voice carrying an edge of surprise as she saw the dining setup. "What's all this?" "Thought I'd surprise you," I said, forcing a smile. "It's been a while since we had a night just for us." Her expression softened, and for a brief moment, she seemed genuinely touched. "This is nice," she said, setting down her bag and walking over to kiss me lightly on the cheek. "Thank you." As we sat down to eat, I kept the conversation light. We talked about Lily's school projects, the upcoming holidays, and mundane details of our lives. Samantha seemed relaxed, almost carefree, as though the weight of her deception wasn't bearing down on her. Or maybe she thought she'd gotten away with it. Halfway through the meal, I decided it was time. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the manila envelope containing the evidence the private investigator had gathered. Setting it on the table between us, I said, "There's something I need to talk to you about." Samantha froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. Her eyes flicked to the envelope, then back to me. "What's this?" she asked, her tone wary. "Open it," I said simply. She set down her fork, wiped her hands with her napkin, and reached for the envelope. Her movements were slow, deliberate, as though she already knew what was inside. When she pulled out the photos and documents, her face drained of color. For a moment, the room was silent except for the soft crackling of the candles. Samantha's eyes darted over the pictures of her and Liam, the receipts from their hotel stays, and the notes detailing their encounters. Her hands trembled as she placed the papers back on the table. "I can explain," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Don't," I replied, my tone icy. "I don't need an explanation. I know everything." Tears welled up in her eyes, but I felt no pity. "Jake, I made a mistake," she began. A mistake?" I interrupted, my voice rising. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary or missing a school recital. What you did wasn't a mistake, Samantha. It was a choice. Over and over again, you chose to betray me, to lie to me, to disrespect everything we built together." She reached across the table, but I pulled my hand away. "I was lonely," she said, her voice breaking. "You've been so busy with work, and I felt neglected. Liam he was there when I needed someone." I laughed bitterly. "Neglected? Do you have any idea how hard I've worked to give you and Lily the life we have? I've sacrificed so much for this family, for you. And this is how you repay me?" Samantha sobbed, her tears falling onto the evidence spread out before her. "Jake, please," she begged. "I love you. I never stopped loving you. I know I've messed up, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling, work through it." "No," I said firmly. "You don't get to decide that. You destroyed this marriage, and you don't get to decide how I move forward." Her pleas continued, but I had already made up my mind. "I've spoken to a lawyer," I told her, my voice steady. "The divorce papers will be served tomorrow. I'm filing for full custody of Lily, and I'm keeping the house. You can take whatever's left, but you're not taking her from me." Samantha's sobs turned into wails. "Please, Jake, don't do this. Don't take Lily away from me." "You should have thought about that before you cheated," I said coldly. "You made your choice, and now you have to live with the consequences." She crumpled into herself, her cries echoing in the quiet dining room. I stood, unable to look at her any longer. "I'll sleep in the guest room tonight," I said, heading toward the stairs. "You can decide if you want to be here when Lily gets back tomorrow." As I closed the door to the guest room behind me, the weight of the evening hit me. My hands shook, and my chest felt tight. Part of me wanted to scream, to punch a wall, to release the fury that had been building for weeks. But I knew none of that would change what had happened. Samantha had rewritten our story, but I was the one writing the final chapter. The morning sunlight filtered through the blinds of the guest room, but it brought no comfort. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring blankly at the floor, my thoughts circling like a storm. Downstairs, I could hear faint movement, Samantha packing, perhaps. I hoped she was preparing to leave. I couldn't face her again. Not yet. Lily would be home in a few hours, and I needed to pull myself together. She didn't deserve to be caught in the middle of this. For her, I would keep the facade of calm, at least until the dust settled. But first, I had to know Samantha's plan. When I descended the stairs, I found her in the kitchen. She looked like a shadow of herself, hair unkempt, eyes red and puffy. Her packed bag sat by the door. She glanced at me hesitantly. "I'll stay at a hotel for now," she said, her voice barely audible. I nodded. "That's for the best." I'll talk to Lily later," she added, wringing her hands. "I don't want her to think I just disappeared." "She'll know the truth in time," I said coldly. "I won't lie to her." Samantha flinched, as though my words were physical blows. "Jake, please," she began, but I held up a hand to stop her. "We've said everything that needs to be said," I replied. "You should go." Her shoulders sagged as she picked up her bag. She paused at the door, as though waiting for me to stop her, to ask her to stay. When I didn't, she slipped out quietly, leaving behind an oppressive silence. The rest of the morning was a blur. I busied myself with mundane tasks, tidying up the house, preparing Lily's favorite snacks, and checking emails I had no intention of answering. Anything to distract myself from the emptiness Samantha's absence left behind. When Lily arrived home, her face lit up with excitement. "Dad," she squealed, running into my arms. I scooped her up and held her tightly, her giggles momentarily pushing the pain to the background. "How was your sleepover?" I asked, forcing a smile. "It was awesome. We stayed up so late, and Mrs. Taylor made pancakes this morning." "Where's Mom?" Her eyes darted around the room, looking for Samantha. "She's not here right now," I said carefully. "She had to go away for a little while." Lily's face fell slightly. "Is she okay?" "She'll be fine," I reassured her. "How about we make some popcorn and watch a movie?" Her smile returned, and she nodded enthusiastically. "Can we watch the one with the dragon?" "Absolutely," I said, ruffling her hair. For the rest of the day, I focused entirely on Lily. We watched movies, played board games, and baked cookies that ended up slightly burnt. Her laughter filled the house, masking the tension that lingered in the air. But once she was asleep, the silence returned, and with it, the weight of everything I had lost. That night, I sat in the living room with a glass of whiskey in hand, staring at the stack of papers the lawyer had prepared. The divorce filing, the custody arrangements, it was all so cold, so clinical. It felt surreal, like it was happening to someone else. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. I hesitated before picking it up. It was a text from Samantha. Please let me explain. I know I've hurt you, but I can't lose Lily. We can find a way to fix this. I stared at the message, the words stirring a mix of anger and sorrow. How could she ask for forgiveness after everything she'd done? Did she really think we could just move past it? I didn't respond. Instead, I set the phone down and took another sip of whiskey, letting the bitterness burn away the remnants of my hesitation. The next few days passed in a haze of routine. I threw myself into work and into being the best father I could be for Lily. I wanted her life to remain as normal as possible, despite the upheaval happening behind the scenes. Samantha sent more messages, each one pleading or apologetic, but I didn't reply. I couldn't. There was nothing left to say. When the divorce papers were officially served, I received a call from her. I let it go to voicemail, but her voice haunted me as I listened later. Jake, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but please, for Lily's sake, can we talk? I need to make this right. I know I've made mistakes, but I still love you. I'll always love you. I deleted the message without finishing it. In the weeks that followed, Samantha's absence became routine. I didn't tell Lily the full truth, but I didn't sugarcoat it either. Mom and I need some time apart, I told her one night when she asked again. But we both love you very much, and nothing will ever change that. Lily nodded solemnly, her young mind trying to grasp the complexities of adult relationships. I miss her, she said quietly. I know, sweetheart, I replied, pulling her into a hug. It's okay to miss her. The legal proceedings moved swiftly. Samantha didn't contest the custody arrangement or my claim to the house. Whether it was out of guilt or a desire to avoid a drawn-out battle, I didn't know. All I cared about was protecting Lily and giving her the stability she deserved. One evening, as I was putting Lily to bed, she asked, "Do you still love Mom?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. I paused, searching for the right words. "I'll always care about your mom," I said finally. "She's an important part of our family. But sometimes, even when you love someone, things don't work out the way you hoped." Lily seemed to accept the answer, her little head nodding thoughtfully. "I hope you and Mom can be happy," she said softly. Tears pricked my eyes as I kissed her forehead. "I hope so too." As I left her room, I realized that while Samantha's betrayal had shattered my trust, it hadn't broken me. I was still standing, still moving forward. For Lily's sake, I had to keep going. I poured myself another glass of whiskey and stood by the window, staring out at the night sky. The stars were faint but steady, a reminder that even in the darkness, there was light to be found. Weeks turned into months, and the rhythm of life began to feel almost normal again. The divorce was finalized, and I had primary custody of Lily. Samantha moved into a small apartment across town and visited on weekends. Her once confident demeanor had faded, she seemed haunted, fragile, like a shell of the woman I'd once known. Lily adjusted quickly, or so I thought. She was resilient, her laughter still bright, her curiosity endless. But sometimes, when she thought I wasn't looking, I'd catch her staring out the window, as though waiting for something, or someone. The sight left an ache in my chest. One particularly cold November evening, Samantha called. Her voice was shaky, her words rushed. "Jake, I need to talk to you. Can I come by?" "I don't think that's a good idea," I said, glancing at Lily, who was engrossed in her coloring book at the kitchen table. "It's important," she pleaded. "Please." Against my better judgment, I agreed. Samantha arrived half an hour later, her face pale and gaunt. She stood in the doorway, hesitating, as though stepping into the house would shatter her completely. "What's going on?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. "Lily, can you give us a minute, sweetheart?" Samantha said softly, crouching to meet her daughter's gaze. Lily nodded and retreated to the living room, clutching her crayons. Samantha turned back to me, her hands trembling. Jake. I haven't been honest with you. A cold chill ran through me. About what? She took a deep breath, tears brimming in her eyes. It's about Liam. About everything. I braced myself for whatever she was about to say, but nothing could have prepared me for what came next. He wasn't just someone I cheated with, she said, her voice cracking. He was dangerous, Jake. He's been harassing me, threatening me ever since I ended things. My stomach dropped. What are you talking about? He's been following me, she whispered, her hands gripping the edge of the kitchen counter for support. Calling me, sending messages. At first, I thought he'd stop, but it's getting worse. He's been watching me, Jake. Watching us. I stared at her, my mind reeling. Have you gone to the police? She shook her head. I was scared. I thought I could handle it. But, tonight, he was outside my apartment. I know he saw me leave. Anger and fear surged through me. You should have told me this sooner, Samantha. You should have protected Lily from. A loud crash interrupted my words. It came from the living room. Lily. I yelled, rushing toward the noise. The scene that greeted me froze me in place. The window was shattered, shards of glass glittering on the floor. Lily was gone. My heart stopped. Lily. I screamed, stumbling out the broken window into the frigid night air. Samantha was right behind me, her own cries piercing the darkness. Lily. Baby, where are you? The yard was empty, save for the crunch of glass beneath our feet. My eyes scanned the street, desperate for any sign of her. Then, in the distance, I spotted a figure, a man carrying a struggling child toward a dark car. Stop! I shouted, my legs propelling me forward with a force I didn't know I had. Samantha followed, her sobs choked with terror. The man turned, his face obscured by shadows. He shoved Lily into the back seat, slammed the door, and jumped into the driver's side. The car roared to life. No! I bellowed, reaching the car just as it sped away. I pounded on the trunk, but it was too late. The taillights disappeared into the night. Samantha collapsed to the ground, her screams echoing in the empty street. I fell to my knees beside her, my chest heaving with sobs. My mind raced, trying to make sense of the chaos. The police arrived within minutes after I called, but it felt like an eternity. Officers combed the area, their voices urgent as they questioned us. Samantha's broken account of Liam's harassment sent shivers down my spine. This was more than betrayal. This was something darker, more sinister than I'd ever imagined. The hours blurred together. I sat in the police station, staring blankly at the phone in my hand, willing it to ring with news of Lily. Samantha was in another room, speaking to detectives, her voice muffled and frantic. Just after dawn, an officer approached me, his face grim. "Mr. Harper," he said, his tone heavy with dread. "We've found the car." My heart leapt and sank in the same beat. "And Lily? Is she?" He hesitated. "We'll need you to come with us." The drive to the scene was agonizing, every second stretching into an eternity. When we arrived, the car was parked on the side of a desolate road, its windows fogged over. Officers surrounded it, their movements careful and deliberate. I stumbled out of the police cruiser, my legs weak beneath me. The officer gently placed a hand on my shoulder, as though to steady me. When they opened the car door, I saw her. Lily lay motionless in the back seat, her tiny frame curled against the door. Her face was pale, her lips blue. I rushed forward, my voice breaking as I screamed her name. "No!" I cried, collapsing beside her. My hands trembled as I touched her cheek, cold and lifeless. I don't remember much after that. Samantha's anguished screams pierced the air, mingling with my own. The officers tried to pull me away, but I clung to Lily, my mind unable to accept the truth. Somewhere in the chaos, I heard them say it, a single word that shattered what little was left of me. Poison. Liam had taken everything. My trust, my family, my child. And now, as I sat in the sterile confines of a police station, Samantha sobbing uncontrollably beside me, I realized that I wasn't the hero of this story. I wasn't the man who could fix everything with courage and resolve. I was just a broken father, staring into the abyss of what could never be undone.